In this video, I will show you how to find the perfect name for your podcast and how to find out whether or not it is available for you to use. Hello and welcome to the Pod Sound School. We are podcast and video coaches and producers. We post weekly videos about podcast and video production, marketing, and social media. So if this is something that interests you, subscribe to our channel and stay in the Pod Sound School loop. Finding the right name for your podcast should not be taken lightly. There's a lot of factors I want you to consider before settling on a name. But you're in the right place and we're going to do this together. By the way, if you want feedback on your podcast name, drop it in the comments below and I'll personally respond. So without further ado, here are the most important things you need to consider before settling on your podcast name. First, discoverability and SEO. These two terms may sound foreign to you if you are new to podcasting and content creation, but you will get very familiar with SEO and you will use it as a tool to grow your audience. To illustrate what SEO is with an example, let's say that you own a small restaurant in your town. You don't have a sign on the front door with the name of your restaurant. Nobody even knows your restaurant exists except the few patrons who come in once in a while. You've been able to bring a few patrons every week thanks to word of mouth, but that's it. Then you realize you have to do more to get discovered, so you put up a sign outside your restaurant where people can see it. You print out flyers with discounts and distribute them to other businesses in the area. The same happens with SEO and your podcast. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it's a series of practices you apply every time you create any kind of content, a podcast, video, blog, and even a social media post. So when internet users are searching a topic online, your podcast will pop up in the search results page on Google, YouTube, and the podcast players. It's very important to understand this concept because the name you choose for your podcast will hurt or help your SEO. For example, if you choose a name somebody else is using, this may conflict with your SEO, and no matter what you do, you won't come up in searches if the other podcast has better SEO and has been around longer. You may also confuse your audience and their audience because both podcasts are using the same name. We cover SEO in more detail in our Smart and Sexy Podcast Launch program, along with everything else you need to know to launch your podcast and podcast brand. And we're offering a free training with one of the lessons we teach in the program. So make sure you snag your seat and come to the training with me and Studio Steve. The second thing you need to consider is the legal aspect. We're seeing more and more podcasters getting in trouble for using other people's podcast names. If the other podcast you share the name with has a registered trademark on the name, they may send a request for you to stop using the name altogether. They can also send requests to the podcast players to take your podcast off the directories. This can be devastating if you already have a big audience, sponsorship deals, ad deals, and you're making consistent money with your podcast. Also, you would have to get different URLs, social media handles, and rebrand your entire podcast. Anyway, a big mess you want to stay away from. And this takes us to point number 3, and this is to check whether or not the URL or website name and social media handles are available for you to use. Ideally, for branding and making it easy for people to find you, you want your URL or website name, podcast name, and social media handles to match. In our case, our podcast is Pod Sound School, which, by the way, if you want to check it out, the link is in the description of this video. Our website is also podsoundschool.com, and our social media handles are Pod Sound School, so people looking for us can easily find us. And the last thing to consider is to choose a name that is easy to pronounce, easy to spell, and memorable. You may be tempted to use something that has meaning to you, a word or a phrase, but before you settle on the name, think whether or not it will be easy for your audience to understand and correctly type into their phones. Think about whether or not it would be easy for your listeners to recommend your podcast to their friends and family. If the type of your show or topic allows it, something that I recommend is to use a descriptive name. To give you a few examples, we have This American Life, or How I Built This, or How to Start a Startup, or Beauty Business Podcast. What all of these names have in common is that they are descriptive. You get a pretty good idea of what the podcast is about just by reading the title. They're easy to pronounce, easy to spell, and also easy to remember. However, if your podcast will be an extension of your already established brand, you can use the name of your brand for your podcast if the podcast will cover topics related to the brand. But what if my podcast name is taken, and how do I find out? So now let's say that you have this really cool name in mind and you want to find out whether or not the name is already being used. The first thing that I do is to type the name on Google followed by the word podcast. So let's say we want to name the podcast Parenting Teens. If we type the name on Google, you'll find out pretty quickly that there's already a podcast using that name. You can click inside the podcast and see if it's active and episodes are being posted regularly. If you see that the podcast is no longer active, you can contact the host or the network and tell them your intentions about using the name. Something that I would do is to go directly to the podcast directories, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and type the name in the search bar. Another tool you can use is Listen Notes. Listen Notes is a podcast search engine. Listen Notes is like Google for podcast. This is one of my favorite websites to use when I'm doing name research for my clients. Okay, Patsky, if you like this video but still feel you need more information about podcasting, make sure you sign up for our training. It is free and you will walk out with a plan of action on how you can start growing your podcast audience even before launching your podcast. Super important. I added the link to the description of this video. Also, these 2 videos right here will help you when setting up your show. And before you go, the same 2 things. No olviden hacer la tarea and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Happy casting, amigos!